Doom the Dark Ages. It's review time, boys. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it woke? Well, it's obviously not woke. If it was actually like that, we would have known from the start, okay? The dragon, not gay, which is strange. And the female character that you see, not oppressive. And you're still the Doom guy. So I guess it doesn't really matter. Anyway, let's get into it.
Today I'm bringing you my review for Doom the Dark Ages. I played it here on PC, beat the game in about 15 hours or so, and I'm excited to talk about it because this is a game that I've been really looking forward to ever since it was announced, because the last game it produced in Doom Eternal, I said was one of the best first-person shooters I had ever played, and that still holds up to this day. There's just that every now and again I get a little itch, I reinstall Doom Eternal, I fire it up and I go, man, this game is great. Now, Doom the Dark Ages was saying a lot of things I really like to hear about Doom. In particular, was that Dark Ages was just about the campaign. It was embracing the single-player component of Doom. I enjoyed 2016's foray into multiplayer. It was classic and enjoyable, but I felt like addition by subtraction was the case here with Dark Ages after battle mode was a thing for Eternal. Not that battle mode was awful, it just felt like that time and energy could have been spent elsewhere. So since the campaigns for Doom have already ruled twice over, I had all the reason to believe that Dark Ages would knock it out of the park, and I think for the most part, they've done a really good job here. How I'd really define my experience with Doom the Dark Ages is that I thought it was good, but
I'm not gonna lie, introducing a torrent section, especially at the start of the game, is probably one of the dumbest and worst things you can do. But, you know, that's just in general.
I think for a lot of people, this is actually going to be the Doom you're looking for, as I'll break down here. I think this Doom is more in line with 2016's and is definitely more accessible, where if you felt like the sort of race car, fighter jet policies of Doom Eternal were a little too much, a little difficult to get into, I got smushed by that game, so I get it, then this game will be much more up your alley, and that may be music to your ears. However, if you are a Doom Eternal diehard like me, it's not that we wanted Eternal again. We could already tell from the first gameplay trailer, there were dragons and mechs and whatnot, that Doom the Dark Ages was going to be very different. And it was very transparent, talking about monster trucks and being a tank and kind of barreling over your enemies. And that's the gameplay design here. But just because they achieved that design doesn't mean it's going to feel good. And I think for those of you who like those feelings you got from Eternal, you may be searching for why you might not feel the same in the case of Dark Ages. Again,
So I know what he's talking about. I don't know if Maddie knows what he's talking about, but there is a very distinct difference between this new Doom and the previous iteration. So Maddie understands that there is something, but he has no idea what it is, or will he explain?
and good game, but it missed the greatness for me this time around, as I'll break down. If you're new here, you're into day one reviews, consider subscribing. I want to open up with the
Okay, starting off with the presentation, not what the big difference is between this game and the older ones, is kind of stupid. Okay, so listen, this game is pretty much full on combat. Okay, you are taking that flail and you're flailing yourself. That's what's happening here. There's not a lot of worries about ammo drops, health pickups, or anything like that. No, you just pick a weapon and it's go 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 go. Okay, that's what this Doom is about. There's not a lot of planning. There's not a lot of anything. There's just like, there's a corridor, and that corridor has enemies, and these enemies are gonna make mini games for you in the way of summoning typically not purple, but orange things, and one of those orange things is green, and you're supposed to hit the green thing back or whatever, and then bam, good things happen to you. Yeah, I would say that it's a very zoomified thing. This game is Path of Exile 1, while the previous iterations of the game were, well, modern iterations of the game, I should say, were Path of Exile 2.
presentation. Easily one of my favorite parts of this game. This is just spectacle that is second to none. The way cutscenes are shot honestly reminded me of Bungie's era of Halo. In particular, some shots I think were very direct callbacks that I looked at it and went, you know what? I can't wait for Halo fans to see some of those there. But also,
This is clearly way more Doom than Halo.
it's a real testament to things like the lighting, the environmental detail. I mean, the artists responsible for working on these areas are worthy of so much praise. They did so much to achieve what I think is a brilliant world to explore. And the biggest difference here between Doom the Dark Ages and Eternal is Eternal had these vistas, these overlooks where you went, man, the architecture, the lighting, the colors, everything's working together really well here to create this sweet visual palette. But a lot of it was not something you could explore or feel like you were in once you got into that building. In the case of Doom the Dark Ages, many of these levels are broken wide open, and so the things you see, you do get to explore. And so the visuals are a big point of praise for me in this game, because also, like Eternal, there are these brief moments where the action slows down and you can really take it in. And sometimes I felt bad zooming by all of the detail. There's one shot, I won't spoil what, but in the final level I looked at and went, geez, man, like they are wicked talented when it comes to environment art, and it shows out again here with Dark Ages. I also think in a lot of ways this is the most badass the Doomslayer has been, not just because of the outfit or the dragons and the mechs he pilots, but it's just his entire demeanor. I think it really captures the anger that the Doomslayer has, just his demeanor, the way he's animated, the way he acts, the way he attacks in these cutscenes. It really just captures him super well. You can feel the character in him despite very little ever being said.
Okay.
Another bit of detail that they've really knocked it out of the park with here is gore. It really respects where you're shooting and what you're shooting with. I mean, there was one point where I was on a turret.
I mean, to be absolutely fair, this is probably the best student section that I have seen in a game in forever, but still, a student section.
And I was just raining fire down on some giant demon, and I watched as the chunk of his thigh flew off, and I could just literally see the bone underneath, and I went, oh, clearly that's just like deliberate, that's set up. But then I was doing it in combat with my guns, and I was shooting different parts of their body and just watching chunks fly off, and it's a gross level of detail, but it really makes the shooting satisfying, and it is just awesome to saw through a lot of these enemies. And to kind of wrap up some thoughts on presentation, they do a really good job with pacing in this game. One of my critiques of Doom 2016 was that I feel like they kind of give you everything that you wanted to play with way too soon. And so the last few missions are spent with that toy box, and it's good game design, but I kind of like the carrot at the end of the stick in these Doom games. Eternal did that very well all the way up until the very end, and I think Doom the Dark Ages also does this very well, where they're always putting something kind of interesting or fun to mess around with when it comes to these levels in Doom the Dark Ages. So yeah, the spectacle and the pacing are really good. And when I open the video versus what I just said, you might have like a lot of questions, like how did we get here? Like, it sounds like you really liked it. Well, let's get a little bit into the history of the Doom franchise, because id Software has gone on record of how they view the movement, shooting, and combat across their games. In 2020, they defined Doom Eternal as a race car or a fighter jet, while 2025's Dark Ages is referred to as a monster truck or an iron tank. And then there's 2016, which after Eternal and Dark Ages is still great, but it definitely feels slow. But I do think this description of the monster truck is entirely...
Yeah, okay, he does understand the difference. Slightly, actually, not gonna lie. Surprised that we can go this far, but hey.
Accurate when it comes to Dark Ages. While you're still quite fast, I think faster than they actually sold it to you as, much of your time in Dark Ages is going to be spent barreling over your opponents. Perhaps a little too easily, and we'll get to that, but I mean, everything from just locking onto your opponent and just shield rushing gives you so much speed and momentum, but you also plow through like 8 enemies in that window too. Also attached to all of this messaging, though, has been the term stand and fight. The goal of id was to get closer to what traditional Doom was as you wade through projectiles rather than complex weapon swapping and the resource balancing that you found in Doom Eternal. Dark Ages is, as I said earlier, much closer to 2016's Doom, and I do think that'll be music.
Really? We're just gonna completely ignore the previous existence of Doom? The reason why limited resources were introduced was because it kind of makes the gameplay a little bit more, you know, not cautious really. You can still blast and go through it really fast, but limited ammunition does make you, you know, value things that you have. This whole game is essentially designed about the non-stop flow. There's one enemy pack that you charge in, you juggle them with your hand on their nether regions and they explode, and then you will go off to the next one. There's no respite, there's no nothing in between. Every enemy that you just execute drops the ammo that you want and the health that you want, so there's never really a problem. And this is the thing. Are you into this kind of gameplay? Again, previously Doom was more Path of Exile 2, now this is more Path of Exile 1. And it kind of just depends on what you honestly prefer. There's no wrong answer here, which is the good part. But, these kind of switches are definitely something that will create discussion. Maybe even, something else between the player base, because this is a severe departure from what it was previously and how this is made.
To a lot of people's ears. However, Dark Age's entire design as a game is much more flat, accessible, and easier.
Also, yeah, the easier part. I mean, you can see it from the clips, right? And that's the big thing. This is no struggle. There is no struggle, pretty much as I can tell, at least so far. There's not a lot of struggle no matter what you do. You just kill something, you just shoot something, you press the E button on it, and you're back on top, and rinse and repeat.
And there's no
and the downside is, how exactly do you make something as simple as this complicated? You can't. We already have gone through Diablo 4 and its downfalls. When you simplify things down to an extremely simple formula of zoom, 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 kill, 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 get rewarded, zoom, zoom, zoom again, there is no real way of making that more complex, because actually introducing anything complex breaks the rhythm of the game, which probably makes it feel worse than anything else. And if you just bump up the numbers for HP, damage taken, and whatnot, sucks to suck. It's going to be pretty bad. It's not going to feel good.
Denying that Eternal was a tough, hardcore, high-skill game. You can make Dark Ages that way with plenty of difficulty tweaking, but I beat the game on the second highest difficulty, only dying about 5 times across the 22 total missions. And keep in mind, I need to make this very clear, this is not me doing a subtle...
See, yes, again, when you make a game like this, difficulty doesn't matter. And there's honestly not much you receive from playing it on the hardest difficulty. The moment you understand what you're doing, the hardest difficulty doesn't make sense. For example, I play every Fallout game on max difficulty, but the reality is I usually at some point thinking I'm like, oh, am I playing this on easy? Oh no, it's maxed out. Because until you get the stuff that you need to do the things that you want, the game is going to be difficult. And when you get those things, when you acquire the knowledge, the skilled items, it's over. And in this game, it's effectively just understanding whenever you see an E button, you press it, and there you go.
Flex. I'm not great at these games. Like, I definitely used to play a lot of first-person shooters and used to be very good at them, so there is some affinity for them, but...
Same, Maddie. Same, my sweet dear friend. I also used to play shooters. And I was really good at them as a kid. God damn, I absolutely dominated CS 1.6. Listen, I played with the AWP most of the time, and a Desert Eagle. My headshot rate for the Desert Eagle was something close to 90%. My AWP headshot rate was close to something like 80%. And my AK-47 and M16 headshot rate was probably 95+%. If I did not get the kill in a headshot, I did not get the kill. And my KDA was amazing. Amazing. Most servers 5-1, and now I don't want to play those games because I don't want to know how trash I am, because now I'm absolute garbage, okay? Now I feel like if I haven't played any of those games, all the skill is lost, all the reaction speed, all of that is lost, okay? I'm not touching a shooter game.
But like, Doom Eternal, I got waxed in a lot of times, especially those later missions. I was dying a lot on the standard difficulty. Doom the Dark Ages, even as I continue to tune it up and tune it to be more difficult, isn't nearly as merciless as what you get in Eternal. And again, for a lot of people, this is going to be great. And I didn't need...
Yeah, you can literally see it. Again, you have a shield here that kind of is like your catch-22 for being immortal.
it to be this hardcore challenge, but there is just too long didn't read something to be said here about just how easy this game really is. But the question is, why is it easier? And why does that affect your verdict if you can try to tune the difficulty a little bit to your liking? Well, it comes down to some of the core game design of standing and fighting, which at its heart is parrying. As you've already seen, I imagine, Doom the Dark Ages gives you a shield. It allows you to go full Captain America with a shotgun, though, and that is awesome. However, when you see a green attack pattern coming, you're going to hit the parry button, and even on the highest of difficulties, this window is extremely forgiving. Again, this actually may be music to a lot of people's ears. I've been saying that a lot this video, but that's the thing I'm trying to acknowledge here, is that while it may not fully be the Doom for me, it actually may be the Doom for you, which is why I'm not like, this is bad, man. Because I think of games like Expedition 33 or Sekiro, where it's like, yeah, I like the idea of parrying, but I'm not very good at it, or I'm getting older, my timing's not quite what it used to be. You don't really have to worry about that here really at all when it comes to Dark Ages. I found the window, even when it was fully tuned down, to just be
having a white monster claw in my fridge.
Extremely...
I don't.
Forgiving, extremely open. And that's because basically every enemy in this game is going to be slinging green fire attacks at you or green laser attacks at you that you'll be parrying like a madman, to the point where you will sometimes stun lock yourself because of how much you have parried back to back to back to back. It's a lot of parrying.
Yep.
But part of the reason, to my original point, that Doom the Dark Ages is so easy is because despite how many new enemy types they throw at you, and to be clear, there's a lot of enemies.
I mean, as we already saw, like, a bunch of different enemies, and all of them, as you could see, have extremely simplistic patterns of attack. It's pretty much just have gun, shoot gun, like 4 or whatever many orbs come, and you can squeeze in between them and avoid the damage. Yeah, enemy variety means honestly nothing unless the enemies do something unique. I think that's why Serious Sam actually was such a good game, because Serious Sam had a good amount of variety of weapons also, but a good variety of stuff. I loved it.
They rarely actually feel varied in how you approach them and how they attack you and how you defend yourself from them, where your game plan...
By the way, fun fact, the original Serious Sam, if you were playing on easy difficulty, you could literally just go up to the last boss, you know, before the mothership, and knife it to death in like 20 hits. Fun stuff.
Is going to alter. You will always parry every enemy in the game. Any common demon, any boss, yes, even the final boss, which was extremely underwhelming, might I add, anyone. It is flat across the entirety of the campaign. So with seldom new attack patterns and...
By the way, it's not even the fact that you can parry and it's easy to do. It's the fact that the whole game is just designed around the fact that you must parry. And that's also a weakness of design.
The same response from me, which is just timing a very, very accessible parry button. No single enemy threw me anything that forced me to evolve my pattern. And by the 6th chapter in the game, I was in cruise control. And by the end of the game, while I was entertained, it's just a fun shooter at the end of the day, my eyes had kind of glazed over as the model had more than worn out its welcome with little to really evolve it. And perhaps what made me feel sad is when I realized why that was the case. And it was because I feel the weapon wheel wasn't as embraced with the enemy design here. So if you've played Eternal, I'm going to remind you of some things, but if you haven't, basically Doom Eternal allowed you to swap to different weapons that would allow you to exploit certain enemy weaknesses or have different physical traits on these enemies that if you targeted would make your life less of a living hell.
Wait, so the thing I said at the start of the video, Matty actually understands that? He just didn't feel the need to say it, which is kind of strange, I guess. I personally think that was very important to be said.
So, small example, the Kako Demon floating around, you take out the shotgun, the alternate attack shoots a grenade in their mouth. This is a quick way to put them in a state where you can finish them off with a glory kill. Or there were those robotic demons with spider tails that shot lasers at you. If you shot the laser tail, that would completely incapacitate them and allow you to take them out a little bit easier. And there were certain weapons that shredded through that easier than others, so you'd be swapping to that. Or another example are the pinkies. They'd run at you, and it didn't matter what weapon you had to shoot them from behind. So it changed how you navigated all these combat scenarios when they threw all three of these at you at once.
Yes, exactly. And this Doom doesn't have any of it. Again, it's Path of Exile 1 versus Path of Exile 2.
All those levels of engagement are gone from Doom the Dark Ages in exchange for what I call a much more flat level of accessibility and approach to the combat. So instead of embracing weapon exposing weaknesses, Doom the Dark Ages opts for an armor system on their enemies that requires you to lay on firepower of any choosing before you bounce your shield off of them and break said armor. But don't get that too confused with like spongy enemies. I think the actual enemy health was balanced really well, but again, it just means you kind of approach Doom the Dark Ages enemies the same as from start to finish. The other element that they embrace until the very end with its combat are what are called morale fights. So these battles, you'll see a health bar and a shield bar at the top of the screen. The leader of these enemies is literally invincible until you kill everyone around them. So as you kill everyone, you're going to see this blue meter beneath the health bar lower. And I do think this is a totally fine system because it's fun at first. You navigate these combat arenas and you're basically avoiding these enemies like the plague and trying to make sure you take everyone else out around them. But they do it like constantly, and they do it to a point where...
By the way, you know what I absolutely hate? It's the way that these things look. Like this.
Enemies like the plague and trying to make sure you...
You see that? Is it me or this looks really bad and kind of dull and kind of hitbox not intuitive?
You take everyone else out around them. Even by the final mission, I'm like, oh my god, again? Like, there's nothing new here, and I think it does speak a little bit to some of the plain mission design in the game. Like, it's usually getting 2 or 3 keys, and Doom 2016 and Eternal were very straightforward as well in their mission design too. So again, that's fine with me, but it's why, as I'm trying to unpack for you all here, the enemy design and the variety are clearly the key elements for me that I found to be missing in certain components of Dark Ages, which did take it from that great area down to the good area. The thing Dark Ages tries to do in a self-aware move to provide variety are the dragons and the mech fights. Now, back to what I talked about with spectacle and presentation, absolutely epic and awe-inspiring. There is that feeling of power when you are just flying your dragon through some of these areas and dogfighting with other demon ships. It's really cool. But the heart of the dragon missions is always going to be locking on in these kind of weird dodging mini games as you take out these shielded parts of the ship, and very similar to the parry system of the combat on the ground, the dragon combat embraces that a lot as well. So no like special moves or any takedowns or anything like that. And
so I don't know, but are people gonna like this Doom more or less? Because there is gonna be a clear winner here. I'm not sure which one is it. Now, personally, I don't like the Zoom Fests, as you may or may not know. But that's me. And my tastes are unacquired shitholery, honestly. But most people, as much as I understand, kind of like these Zoom type of scenarios. For example, Path of Exile 1 or verse 2. People really, there's a lot of people who are pissed about Path of Exile 2 not being a Zoom fiesta like Path of Exile 1, where you can finish a map in 10 seconds, and that's pretty much it. Damn. And you get a blue reward thingamajig. I don't know. Are people gonna like this or like it less?
instead, it's just locking on to parts of a ship, and when they start shooting at you, you dodge in a particular direction, and that supercharges your attacks, and then you take out that part of the ship a little bit quicker, and you rinse and repeat that until the ship lands, and then you land on the ship and go on foot. And so it just, I don't know, it just, again, feels like it's flat, right? And by flat, I don't mean like literally my emotions are flat, but the design of the game, even...
No. This is boring and everyone knows it. Like, there is no excuse for this shit. Okay? You know what? I want the dragon to be gay at this point, because that's more interesting.
To the dragons was flat. In the mechs, it's very cool, and I think they balanced the timing of the mechs much better, because you spend less time in them, and they're usually there to punctuate big story moments. But it also does come down to dodging, which is the same as the parry system, and the windows for both the dodging in the dragon and the mech are more forgiving than the parrying when your gun's out. So if I'm already talking about a very forgiving window, can you imagine what it's like for dodging in the mech? It's insane, but it's a lot of hand-to-hand combat. Again, very cool presentation. The sound design is incredible as you're like punching through these enemies and you hear like, I gotta know what the sound design team at id was doing to make these sorts of crazy, like crunchy, gooey.
I kind of think it's lame that every single monster dies the same way. You know, you kick them in the face and suddenly a chunk of their arm falls off, exposing bone. I think that's really kind of a obnoxious.
Squishy, nasty sounds as you're like literally punching metal on bone. And
Also, you can if you pay attention here, you can see the punches are not actually connecting at all. This was why the previous Doom games were a little bit more intimate, because the executions, well, the glory kills, I should probably say, but whatever, the executions, that felt personal, okay? You were killing those guys not because it was the right thing to do, but because they owed you $5, okay? And there's a vengeance in that.
Flesh and just knocking off pieces of their body with it. It's
Yeah,
very
look at
cool.
this. Yeah.
Very empowering.
You can see, you can tell that there's no connection.
Very Transformers, even, or kind of like a mega.
But again, maybe it's just me. And, well, watching this is different, obviously, right?
Megazord and Power Rangers. It's awesome. Again, just what a cool game to be able to say, like, you're basically
Also, the enemy variety for the big ones is
Captain America with a shotgun. You can ride a dragon and get in a mech. I just wish, at least in these instances, the mechanics of how you approach these enemies, again, on a defensive option, is just a little.
I don't have an opinion on this. It's fine as a game, but it's like, is it so much better or so much worse than the previous one? I don't know. I think for me, it's definitely not. But I'm really curious what you guys think in general. Like, do you think this is better, or do you think this is more simpler and more brain dead? Man, I'm really torn. Because I know that my opinion does not represent the masses here, okay? That's 100%. Because I look at these things way, way differently. Anyway, that was Mr. Matty Plays 10 out of 10. Bye!